Hello and welcome to the MCG, wrapping up day 3 of the 4th test of the border-gavaskar trophy. I'm Izzy Westbury. I've got Callum Ferguson to my left. And Callum, what was your highlight of today?
Look, I've got to say it was Nitish Reddy's 100. I mean, what a performance, what an innings under extreme pressure, it must be said, after what was a collapse yesterday afternoon for India. I thought the intent from Nitish Reddy and particularly Washington Sundar, I thought was fantastic. Whilst they weren't all-out attack, I thought the tempo of the partnership was really good. Obviously, Sundar took a bit of a back seat, but that was required. You don't want to expose the tail when you're so far behind the 8 ball. So Nitish Reddy, for me, took the game on when it was required, but showed great composure as well in the face of adversity. What a wonderful 100.
I'm always happy to joust a bit and disagree, but on this occasion I think that I absolutely am in agreement there. I mean, that was such a wonderful maiden test century, Boxing Day test century by the 21-year-old. We'll get back to that in a minute. I'll wrap up the scores quickly. India started the day, so it started not particularly well. I mean, 5 for 165. They were reduced to 7 for 221 inside 65 overs. So it was a matter then of, all right, when rather than if they were going to be bowled out. But we had a wicketless session and then almost another. Nitish Kumar Reddy and Washington Sundar, there was a 127 run stand, and it was a beautiful partnership between the two of them. Nitish Kumar Reddy, the aggressor, but not silly shots or anything, really capitalising, and Washington Sundar, another young gun, just happy to play the kind of the anchor role. Sundar, he made 50, fell on 50, with Reddy, this is quite interesting as well, Reddy needing 3 more runs. He was 97 at the time. Jasprit Bumrah walks out, he falls for a duck. Bit of late drama, but it didn't deny him in the end that test century. Bad light stopped play, and as you might be able to tell behind us, it has been raining. In India, 9 for 358. So they still trail Australia by 116 runs, but crucially, we're at the end of day 3, taking a lot of time out of the game with that partnership. And Australia will have to bat again, obviously, so we're past the follow-on deficit. It could be really interesting over the next 2 days, considering that Australia, remember, need to win this series to wrestle back the border-gavaskar trophy. So tomorrow could be, it could be a bit dicey for Australia.
I think it's going to be a lively day of cricket, and what we've seen today was fantastic test cricket again. We haven't had too many long days of test cricket where really the batting's got on top, and I think we saw that probably in both innings actually in this test match, where both the bowling and the batting were able to get on top and dominate for periods of time. So I see tomorrow, with the lost overs today, potentially really encouraging Australia to push the envelope when they get out there to bat eventually, once they take the last wicket, play really positively, because as you said, Australia don't hold the border-gavaskar trophy at the moment. It's India, so they hold the whip hand. Australia are going to have to push the envelope to try and get enough runs on the board to give themselves enough time to try and bowl out India, which may involve dangling a carrot for India and potentially risking losing to win.
So Nitish Kumar Reddy, 105 not out overnight, so there's still batting to come from the Indian first innings. What I think I was most impressed was the way in which these 2 young Indian batters from 8th down, so this is only the 5th time that a visiting batter has scored a test century from 8th or lower. I think it was Matt Pryor had one in 2011, good old Englishman, Yasir Shah in 2019 in Adelaide, but otherwise very, very rare. They're both in their early 20s. I was incredibly impressed by the composure, the rotation of the strike, and the way in which they complemented each other at the crease.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said there. Just incredible.
Oh, that's easy. Let's go ahead.
Let's all wrap that up. Perfect. But what really stands out, I think, with Nitish Reddy is he may come across as a bit of a dasher and a guy that just throws the kitchen sink at everything that comes his way. Yes, he does, but to the right deliveries. He's become really adept in these conditions with the extra bounce and pace at picking and choosing which balls to go hard at and which balls to shut down. And that's been a real key of his batting throughout this series so far. Regularly scoring at a run a ball, but not always. And in this innings in particular, I thought he showed great composure, as you mentioned, and great selection as to when to go and when not to. He rode the wave of momentum throughout the day and ended up with a very deserving 100.
Does this cause a bit of a conundrum for India, certainly from a selection perspective? The last time that India batted more than 80 overs, so essentially until the new ball in their first innings, was against England and Dharamshala 8 tests ago. So they haven't managed it yet this series.
Yeah.
They didn't manage it against New Zealand at home. We've got 2 young guns way down the order who, I mean, certainly Reddy was picked as a bowling all-rounder and now is an absolute batting gun.
Yeah.
Is this a headache for India?
Well, somewhat. I think you look at this test match, and at the moment, you're probably dealing with a Jasprit Bumrah whose workloads are extremely high at the moment, considering the lack of Shami in the lineup. He's had to shoulder a lot of the heavy workload in this series, and I think as they go forward, I think Nitish Reddy's going to get better and better as a bowler. He'll get bigger and stronger. He's only 21 at the moment, so I think long term he's going to eventually become a hardened, all-round bowler. But at the moment, yes, it probably does. With Jadeja, Reddy, and also Sundar as all-rounders, you might need to see one of them push up the order a little bit further. But it does help that Rishabh Pant bats a bit higher up, and he's got the ability to do so.
What about the impact on Australia? So that was a long old day out in the field, and there were a lot of overs put into the fast bowlers, especially when you consider that the fourth bowler, I guess, Mitchell Marsh, only managed to bowl 7 overs, none for 28. Mitch Starc also wicketless, 25 overs. We saw him go off a little bit as well with a possible strain somewhere. He came back on. 3 wickets to Boland and Cummins, but that's a heavy workload for a day out there. They've got 2 more days of this test, back-to-back in Sydney. Is that possibly the most important thing that India have done, is put overs into the Aussie quicks?
Absolutely, and what it's done is also highlight the importance of the overs from that all-round position in Mitch Marsh. So to see him bowl 7 today was great, but they're going to need a lot more in the second innings as well. Whether he can stand up to do so is another question altogether. So fingers crossed he's able to. Hopefully he pulls up well after this one, and then we'll be able to see those frontline quicks get a little bit more assistance than they have through the series, because let's face it, when Josh Hazlewood went down a few tests ago, it really did make that workload on Starc and Cummins heavy, and they will be feeling every bit of that right now after a long day in the field.
Is Mitch Marsh's spot in peril? Not many wickets, only gone to double figures once without 47 a few tests ago. Is this spot up for grabs next test?
I think he's got to make some runs in this second innings. I think he is under some pressure. His numbers aren't great at the moment. We saw Nathan McSweeney fall by the wayside already in this series, and he hasn't bowled a lot of overs. I think we were all hoping he'd bowl more overs in this series and have more of an impact with the ball. Hopefully he has that in the second innings with both bat and ball, but he wouldn't be feeling overly comfortable in his boots right now in that position. And the fact of the matter is, runs are everyone's currency when you bat in the top 6, so he desperately needs some runs.
Could Australia, could Pat Cummins as captain, could they have done anything different? We saw Nathan Lyon sort of come into the series with a couple of wickets. He's hardly had a chance to bowl. What could they have done differently? Or is it one of those things where you think, well, they did their best. It's a pitch that's not being particularly responsive to the bowlers, and hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Sorry, which bowler were you talking about?
All of them. Could they have done any better? I mean, the captaincy of Pat Cummins as well.
Yeah. Look, in all honesty, there's some periods of time in cricket where the opposition are allowed to play well. And I thought the Australians actually were quite creative at times. They did bowl to a 7-2 field at times and shut down one side, try and lure Sundar and also Reddy into some shots outside the off stump, and then at times they went short at them and set up the field quite nice. At times, the opposition are going to play well, and it's how hard and fast you can stick to your disciplines, and I thought the Australians were pretty disciplined. Through that middle session, they weren't getting away from Australia. They were scoring at just over two runs and over through most of that partnership. I'd suggest they did a lot right. They did restrict, and then when they got their opportunity, took wickets late. So, yeah, look, I thought Australia did a lot right, but India were very, very good through the day, and they've set up a cracking next 2 days.
One thing that Australia certainly did right is set the field to Rishabh Pant earlier on in the day. They had fine leg, deep third, and a deep square leg as well, and that set the trap for Rishabh Pant, who's used to unconventional stroke play, or being the master, the king of unconventional stroke play. We've got a Sam Constas and a Travis Head in our midst at the moment. He hasn't particularly scored many runs in this series so far. A few tips perhaps from his younger teammates?
Look, it's really interesting because he is someone that has, in recent times, had really big impacts on games, putting big scores on the board at a good rate of knots, which has given India the ascendancy or dragged them back into contest by playing in a flamboyant manner. We've got to ride the waves, I think, with Rishabh Pant. You're not always going to see a pretty dismissal from him. He's going to look ugly at times. So you've got to be understanding of that, because if you want to enjoy the good times, you've got to wear some hits. And I think Rishabh will be really disappointed with the manner of this dismissal because of the situation of the game. And I just feel like he'll be losing a little bit of sleep, thinking what came after him really has set up India for a bit of a launch at these last 2 days, and potentially got themselves to a position where Australia will feel the pressure to set and dangle a carrot on the last day. He'll feel like he missed an opportunity today. Yeah. I dare say there's going to be some heat come his way as well via the media, which just increases that pressure on him. I don't think you want to be hauling him over the coals with these sort of dismissals, but he will be disappointed himself, because if you haul him over the coals for a dismissal like that, you may lose the genius, and that's the last thing anyone wants. Yeah,
I'd stick to that last point. I really agree with that. I'm entirely unconcerned by the way in which he got dismissed, because it was almost the only person that could have been dismissed it that way, falling over himself, trying to scoop it down to, I think he was trying to scoop it down to fine leg. It went down the gullet of third.
Especially with the field that was set, that would be the disappointing thing for him.
And to your point that you don't want to lose that genius, and 100% we don't want a whole 11 full of Rishabh Pants, and no team can afford that. I think that's where basketball sometimes lets itself down, the England approach of all or nothing, is that you need a few players like that. You need a few sort of unconventional, those that don't mind losing their wickets, but now and again are going to score huge runs. But you can't all play that way.
It's a really good point you make. One of my beliefs in cricket is diversity is your strength. And I think if you roll out the same game plan for every one of your top 6 or 7 batters, it's going to be really easy to set up against and really easy to come up with game plans for as an opposition. Your strength is your diversity. Show different weapons in different positions in the order, and you've got to think a little bit as an opposition captain. I
think that's the methodology we use for the Triple M commentary team as well.
Without a doubt, it's a real strength of ours.
Assortment of characters in there, which I think is fair to say. Looking to the future then, the immediate future. Tomorrow, got 2 more days of cricket. It looks as though the weather is set fair. I know it's raining behind us at the moment. Where's this game going to go, and what does that mean for the context of the series?
That's a really good point, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think it's going to be a really lively couple of days. I dare say Reddy will come out and go pretty hard early. Got to try and farm the strike a little bit there, Nitish, just to make sure that he guards the strike from Siraj and try and make the most of the morning session and make sure that they can eke out as many as possible, as quickly as possible, because what I think will happen is the Australians will feel like they need to get out there and set a total. So, they don't necessarily need to go hard, but they've just got to make sure that they accumulate more runs and take more time out of the game, so that there's more pressure on the Australians to score quickly and try and set up a target for India on the last day and give themselves as many overs as possible. Conversely, I think if they're able to do it well in the morning and bowl well and keep the pressure on the Australians and take some early wickets, then things get really tricky from an Australian standpoint to try and get the chase right on day 5 for the Indians.
Really intriguingly poised, just gone over the halfway mark of this test, of this series certainly. So do come back tomorrow, obviously, for more of the same. I'm going to go to Secret Cricket Club questions for the moment, because, you know what? I see these questions and I think, why didn't I ask half of them? Because there's some really good ones here.
Always are.
Mick, he asks, is it now becoming clear that India have turned up to ensure that they don't lose the series rather than trying to win it? It feels a bit harsh. I mean, India, they won the last 2 series here. They're holders of the border-gavaskar. I mean, I sometimes think about that with Australia going to England, and because invariably Australia hold the Ashes and they go to England to retain them. But is that a bit harsh? I don't know.
I think it is. I think if you look at the way Rishabh Pant's played through the series, I also think that the way Nitish Reddy's played, they're playing good, positive cricket. Not everyone's going to be in the sort of form that allows them to play that style. However, I do feel like India played some really hard-nosed Test cricket today and got themselves back into the contest, and you've got to respect that. So I don't necessarily agree.
Interesting question here from P. Jean, considering that India are more than 100 runs behind. But he says, do you think India has the ascendancy going into the 4th day? We talked about momentum yesterday.
Well, we did. And I am a believer in momentum. However, I do feel Australia have still got the whip hand. They've got the lead at the moment. I dare say they'll be looking to knock over India with a 100-plus run lead, which is a huge position of strength. And they've got some Australian players that are now starting to show some really good form. So I think they'll still feel like they've played really good cricket and they're in a good position to win the Test match.
And I also think that both sides, in terms of their bowling attacks, both of them have a lot of overs in terms of their real spearheads, whether it be Bumrah, whether it be Stark, whether it be Cummins. They're all going to be feeling it. So this is almost the nitty-gritty end to see who are the true warriors out there, who can stick it out the longest. I mean, I wouldn't put it past any of them. They're all bowling mid-140s, which is extraordinary, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes from there. Now, Beefy, I don't know whether this is the Beefy.
I'm not sure it's our Beefy.
But we've got a Beefy.
Another one of our Beefies with Willow
If it
Talk.
is the Lord, then hello, sir. Why can Test cricket not evolve and play under lights? It's 2024. There are things that can change with Test cricket. So I guess we came off for bad light.
Yes.
I would add that it is raining, but the reason that the players came off is for bad light. I think part of it is that if you suddenly put the lights on, the conditions change a lot, and you could have lots of accusations of unfairness over one team or the other. It could be quite tricky to regulate, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I feel that way. The red ball is dark, and at times there's varying shades of red with the Kookaburra cricket ball or the Duke. Generally the Duke is a bit darker, but the Kookaburra can be very dark too, and you get that ball under lights in darkness and it becomes very difficult to pick up, and the conditions do change drastically. So at this stage, unless you were able to find a pink ball that was able to behave the same or very similar, we're not going to go that way, and I can't see the pink ball quite being at that point in the near future. I'd say we're a long way from it, actually.
So fairness, consistency and safety probably as well a
Most
big part
important.
of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but good question to ask.
Great question.
And these are the things that
we've been asking it in the dressing rooms since I started playing the game.
But these are the things that cricket needs to be exploring, and I'm sure is, and I'm sure will evolve as time goes on, but not quite there yet. Tom asks, I think it's the final one here. Ooh. Is there a worse shot than the one from Rishabh Pant?
Oh, I mean, again, we're going to laud the guy for playing incredible cricket at times, but then we're going to also haul him over the coals when he plays what looks like a pretty ordinary one. Yeah, I'm not sold on it. I think if we went down that path and we see someone like Constas on day one lapping, and he could have easily missed one first ball, and if it had been on the stumps, that lap looks ugly, and all of a sudden we've lost a young talent to the game. I think the key point here is let's not lose the genius. Let's support them and not just roll them under the bus the first sign of trouble with a bad dismissal. Yes, he's going to look ugly at times, but my goodness gracious me, his best is some of the best you'll ever see.
And there's a lot of Test cricket that's been played, and there's been a lot of ugly Test cricket down the years. Google
absolutely.
it, YouTube it, I don't know. I'm sure there's far worse shots than that, but well, he lives to fight another day.
Yep.
And so do we, because that is the end of this episode of Willow Talk Extras, end of day 3 of the 4th test here at the MCG. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Izzy Westbury, Cal Ferguson. Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks for watching the Willow Talk podcast on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't have to miss an episode wherever you are. And while you're at it, check out these videos up here. They're mostly good.